The devil's on the loose and he's dancing with the mummy.
Deep from the bowels of the Macabre Theater Laboratory, we bring you Macabre Cast. There is nothing wrong with your streaming service. You are exactly where you should be, where the slush puppy machine is always on and cold. Your favorite horror mag is on the rack, discreetly displayed between Women's Wear Daily and Cosmopolitan. I'm your host, Dark Mark, along with my mold-riddled counterpart, Karis, the Little Mummy, here to bring you the latest episode of Macabre Cast, where we'll be dropping ours where they belong and adding them where they don't. Newbies welcome, regulars welcome back, and worshippers get out of here. This is a safe space for those old enough to know trunk or treat and safe trick-or-treating at the local mall eviscerated Halloween. Does anyone even go to the mall anymore? If you haven't already, like, subscribe, or follow my show on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, and, when I'm not violating infantile community standard rules, TikTok. Tell a friend to do the same, even that guy whose breath smells like a corpse 9 days into rotting inside a greenhouse during a heat wave. Yeah, that guy. If you wish to interact with fellow Monster Kids, follow the Facebook page Macabre Theater. It's there where you can send me a voice message and participate in the show. A link can be found in the description of this episode. Or, if you prefer, send me an email to macabretheater666@gmail.com. Macabrecast episode 158 in all its gory glory begins now.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Adoro il cast macabro.
Airport, the Poseidon Adventure, the Towering Inferno, Earthquake, the Hindenburg, Airport 75, Airport 77, Black Sunday, the Swarm, Meteor, Avalanche, the Concorde, Roller Coaster, City on Fire, Flood, the China Syndrome. Is there a problem, Karis?
Nope.
What? You don't like the topic? Again?
It's fine. So, Dark, the other day, I see my friend, Ken, and he's weighing himself on a scale, and he's sucking in his stomach. So I say to Ken, that's not going to help you, sucking in your stomach like that. And Ken replied, no, actually, it does help. It helps a lot. That's the only way I can see the numbers.
And on that note, it's time for horror news. John Carpenter is back with a brand new soundtrack. Not to a film, though. This will accompany his graphic novel, Cathedral. A sequel to the absolutely putrid shark movie, The Black Demon, has begun filming. But don't let that spoil your spirits, for there is yet another shark film set for a June release, titled Chum. Sam Raimi has plans to film a modern adaptation of the ventriloquist horror flick Magic. Justin Long signs on to a killer bee survival film called Stung. Tim Burton is making the rounds at the Cannes Film Festival, saying he's there to pitch a top secret project. It's not too top secret if you're telling everyone. Oh. And that's it for horror news. And Draven agrees. Draven the blood-vomiting bat. Children of the night, what messes they make. So all those films, all those disaster films I read off at the beginning of the show came out between 1970 and 1979. Although there were some that came out after, none had the cast with the likes of The Towering Inferno in 1974. Paul Newman, Steve McQueen, William Holden, Faye Dunaway, Fred Astaire, Richard Chamberlain, Susan Blakely, Jennifer Jones, Robert Vaughn, Robert Wagner. These films would always try to incorporate an athletic superstar into the mix, whether they could act or not. And for this one, it was Buffalo Bills star O.J. Simpson, 20 years before he'd be accused of murder and be a potential real-world horror feature. The basic story here is it's the opening ceremony of a ginormous skyscraper in San Francisco. A fire breaks out due to sketchy practices of the contractor who built it. The inferno threatens to destroy the tower and everyone in it. Now, being trapped in a burning structure and potentially being fried to a crisp is quite frightening. But I can see how most monster kids would not consider this horror, and don't get me wrong, I don't either. But the situation is quite horrific, making the line very blurry to say the least.
Horror chap Matt knows all about monsters. He said they were coming to get me tonight.
Hey, Doc Mark, Little Cars, and all the monster kids hang out at the theater this week. It's Horror Chat Matt checking in. So, Doc, your question this week, do disaster movies count as horror movies? And you know what? I've never really put much thought into this and didn't realize I had such a strong opinion about it. Now, while there are some horrific scenes in these movies, in my mind, there is no way that disaster movies qualify as horror movies. I would lump them, if I was going to lump them into a subcategory, I would put them into the action category. So, yep, I'm going to go out on a limb and say disaster movies, not horror movies. I do have a quick review for you this week in the other Monster Kids. I took in the new Faces of Death. And why I like the concept and the plot of the movie, basically, it follows content board where they approve or disapprove of videos being uploaded to the internet. And the killer in this movie is recreating scenes from the original Faces of Death movie. I thought that was pretty cool. Other than that, though, they cast real people in this, and overall, I just have to say the movie just felt flat. It was entertaining. Like I said, the story was cool, and overall, though, it was missing something. I can't explain. I don't know if it was the way it was shot. There is no mystery as to who the killer is. Maybe that had something to do with it, but yeah, overall, just flat and a little bit boring. I'm going to say skip this thing, 4 out of 10. And that's all I got for this week. So as always, make mine Macabre cast.
No, Matt, I would never have one of these movies be a go-to for horror. But I can see the horror element in them, and I agree with you, they're far more action-packed than your typical horror film. But some of the circumstances are quite horrific. Being stung by hundreds of thousands of bees, burning to death in a building, having rubble fall on you from an earthquake. I mean, as a kid, that's how I learned what earthquakes was from the film Earthquake. And I was so happy to know that I lived in a state that didn't have earthquakes. Although nowadays we kind of have very, very small ones. Even more scary than the earthquake was learning about aftershocks and how it's like the earthquake every couple of hours just kind of keeps happening all over again. Anyway, as I said, horrific circumstances, absolutely, in these films. And Faces of Death, that's kind of a letdown, Horror Chat, because I heard and read so much potential for that film, and when I learned where they were going with it, I was really intrigued. And I still want to see it, and I will form some kind of an opinion. But I appreciate the review. Hope to hear from you again real soon. Horror Chat at.
You are listening to Dark Marks Macabre Cast, episode 158, Natural Disaster, the Undiscriminating Killer.
Hi, Monster Kids. Elijah Broke here. I'm the guy who operates the elevator to the pit of hell. I'm the last guy you see after you fudge up the Macabre Cast horror trivia. Anyhow, that's neither here nor there. Did you ever ask yourself, how can I help Doc Mark? Well, if you listen to this on YouTube, like the video, and please hype the video. If you listen to it on Apple Podcast, give Doc Mark a 5-star review. These simple things will help win the battle of the algorithm. Your support is deeply appreciated.
So I sat down and watched 2026's The Mortuary Assistant on Shudder, directed by Jeremiah Kipp, starring Will Holland, Paul Sparks, and John Adams. So we enter the life of Rebecca, played well by Will Holland. She's a science graduate who takes a night job at Riverfield's Mortuary. The film does a superb job of creating a creepy atmosphere. I mean, just her embalming bodies alone at night kind of sets the stage. Rebecca has her own skeletons to overcome, all the while trying to unravel the mystery of her mentor and boss. Keep your eyes on the dark corners and shadows of this film, because there is something unearthly sinister lurking about, and it just may be trying to possess Rebecca. Great ambience and suspense. The plot becomes a tad convoluted at times, but it evens out in the end. I did find myself wishing more had occurred, but overall, a nice little creepy film. I give this 3 out of 5 stars.
Oh, check it out! Is this something you could share with the rest of us, Amazing Larry?
Greetings, Dark Mark and Carousel Little Mummy. Scary Larry here, jumping on real quick to give my thoughts and opinions. Yay! So, I kind of didn't pay attention completely to last week's topic. Oh. When I did say, growing up, I wish I was a $6 million man, I didn't catch where you asked, would I want to be a vampire? And given it some consideration, I'd have to say no. Because essentially, vampires are parasites. They have to rely on the death and misery of other people to survive. Not my cup of tea. But it is what it is. This week's topic, I loved some of those movies as a kid. Just like Dark Mark, our generation, we were subjected to watching some crazy movies. And a lot of them were those disaster movies when we were just little children. God, under the age of 10, I was watching a couple of those. And I will say they are not horror. Good disaster movies, good deaths and stuff like that to watch type, reality. But no, I wouldn't list them as a horror movie. Not even a subgenre of horror. I think they're standalone. I would classify those more as thrillers, as in, will people survive? We'll do this and that. Especially ones against Mother Nature. It is what it is. It's not like Revenge of Mother Nature. It happens. It's life. So I'm going to say no to that. However, I did watch a Prime documentary that I will recommend. It dragged in a couple spots, but it was good. It's called American Grindhouse. And it's the relationship from where as soon as film became film, that pulp comics and detective books became sources for grindhouse movies. And it's a great explanation of the evolution of them. And I would consider a lot of those grindhouse movies horror films. more realistic horror, more real life horror versus monsters and creatures and stuff like that. But still, very good documentary. If you like grindhouse movies, I would highly recommend that. All right, guys.
Okay, Scary, so now that we've caught up to last week's topic, would you become a vampire? And I respect your answer. And that's what your average normal person would say. And, kudos to you. But here's my next question. If I were to become one, I almost get a sense that you'd be the Van Helsing. Would you be hunting me down? And let me even throw this one. What if we were good friends for a long time, and then you found out I was a vampire? Could you still put the old stake through my heart? So there's your question. You can answer that next week. And yeah, I agree. And I've said this already. I don't really consider disaster films horror films. They just have horrific things in them. And as I've said, this is how I learned as a child about these terrible things that happen in real life, earthquakes, infernos, and very frightening, very horrific. I kind of get more where you're coming from when you say thriller. That's probably a good classification. And the documentary of the Grindhouse films sound fantastic. Those are a piece of cinematic history that's a hoot to look back on, and some of those films are pretty vicious. And I see what you mean with the horror of real life. Thank you again, Scary, for seeing it, so the rest of us just don't have to. More in sync with the horror world probably would be Black Sunday from 1977, written by Silence of the Lambs author Thomas Harris. Yes, he did actually write novels without the character of Hannibal Lecter in them. A terrorist group called Black September seeks to carry out a massive terrorist attack in the United States. An Israeli commando works alongside of the FBI to identify the target and the conspirators. A great cast consisting of Robert Shaw, Bruce Dern, Martha Keller, and Fritz Weaver. Most critical reviews at the time were positive, especially due to the film's climactic scene that takes place at the Super Bowl. The film and story were definitely ahead of its time, and as we've come to unfortunately understand, homeland terrorism is completely terrifying.
You are listening to Dark Marks Macabre Cast, episode 158, Natural Disaster, the Undiscriminating Killer.
Welcome to Cobwebbed Classics, where I dust off a lost, forgotten, or just plain unappreciated film and introduce it to, or maybe just remind you about it, so your spooky Saturday night might run a little creepier. This week's Cobwebbed Classic is 1963's X, The Man with X-Ray Eyes, directed by Roger Corman, starring Ray Milland, Diana Vanderlis, Harold J. Stone. Ray Milland plays Dr. Xavier, who is one to push the boundaries of science. He experiments with a new formula on his own eyes. The experimental recipe allows him to see through solid material, like being able to read from a closed book. And if you were wondering, yes, he can see what people look like naked. But like every mad scientist, Milland begins trying to do good for the world. Instead, becomes obsessed and bitter when others can't see the importance of his discovery. Add bad decision-making to the mix, and you have the perfect mad doctor. Don Rickles comes into the film at the midway point, delivering a stellar performance, and proving to all that he was just as good of an actor as he was a comedian. To create the effect of seeing through a building, Corman filmed the building while it was under construction. It was shot in 3 weeks for just $300,000. There has been a rumor for years. Stephen King talks about it in his book Danse Macabre, as this is one of his favorite films. In the final scene, which I won't give away here, as the screen goes black, a final line is heard. "I can still see." Deemed too intense for audiences of 1963, censors cut the line. No footage of this is known to exist, and the film just abruptly ends. The rumor is false. In a question and answer with Roger Corman, he says the idea was discussed but never filmed. Taglines for this gem are as follows.
Suddenly, he could see through clothes, flesh, and walls.
1963's X, The Man with X-Ray Eyes, is this week's
Classics.
Do you want to participate in Doc Mark's Macabre cast? But you don't want to send a voice message? Maybe you don't like the sound of your own voice, or you're shy. Send Doc an email. He can read your thoughts on the show. Your opinion matters. Send Doc an email at macabretheater666@gmail.com.
The following program is rated TV MALV. It contains strong language and violence. It is intended only for mature audiences.
Metal Melody.
Ho ho! Strap yourselves in, girls. Melody is the M in TV MLV. And the constant swearing. Can you even stand it? My nerves are crushed.
Hello, Doc Mark, Karis the Little Mummy, and all the Macabre Cast fans listening in. This is Metal Melody checking in for episode 158. So, first of all, Mark, I loved episode 156, All Things Burnt Offerings. It was one of the great creepy horror movies. I absolutely loved the whole cast in this, especially Betty Davis. Also, I'm sorry I missed the deadline and wasn't able to participate. That really pisses me off. I hate when that happens because I feel so behind and have to play catch up, which just aggravates the shit out of me. But anyway, regarding episode 157, which is the most recent episode, I would not want to ever be a vampire. Oh. Because even though living the rest of your life would be okay in a way, I wouldn't want to see all the people I love dying year after year while I'm out living everyone. So no, thank you. I wouldn't mind being the Invisible Woman though. I don't think that counts, though. I'd have a lot of fun with that one. As far as the topic for this episode, I do not consider disaster films to be horror at all. Anything like tsunamis, earthquakes, tornadoes, or movies like The Poseidon Adventure, Tower Inferno, etc., etc. Yes, those situations are terrifying, but definitely shouldn't be classified as horror, in my opinion, anyway. As far as movies go, I saw They Will Kill You, and it wasn't a bad movie. It had a lot of action for sure, some good kills. It just wasn't quite my kind of movie. So yeah, I would give it 2 out of 5 stars. I also watched Dolly. I thought it was a very good movie. This movie kind of reminded me of the 2018 movie Incident in Ghostland, where the girls were kind of treated the same way by the candy truck woman and the fat man, as far as being, tortured, raped, and the candy truck woman dressing them up with makeup and playing with them like dolls, in the room filled with dolls. That was really weird, but I thought it was a great movie. If anyone didn't see it and you liked Dolly, I think you might like this one too. It's a little different, but it kind of was similar to me, I felt, as Dolly. Again, Incident in Ghostland. It was a very good movie. I'm going to check out Widow's Bay soon. I think Howard Chat Mad had thrown that one out. I'm going to see what that's about. I will be going to the movies to see the new movie Passenger, which looks pretty good. So I'll have a review for that one in episode 159. And by the way, I just want to add before I forget that I was in hysterics when I heard some little kid advertise I wouldn't be joining the cast this week. I never laughed so frickin' hard.
Metal, cuss bucket Melody.
And then he called me a cuss bucket. But let me tell you something. I'd rather be called a cuss bucket than a bitch bag or something like that. So yeah, like cuss bucket's okay with me. That's cool. 'Cause, yeah, what can I say? I got a potty mouth. I hope everyone is enjoying this summer weather. I mean, it has been freaking beautiful. Like, I've already been to the beach a couple times. Like, it's crazy. I just want to say, I was not involved in the happenings at Hampton Beach. Of course I wasn't. I'm just playing around. But, yeah, kind of why I don't go to Hampton. But anyway, I hope everybody has had a fantastic Memorial Day weekend. And I am off for now until episode 159. Take care. Stay healthy. Bye.
That kid you're talking about, Melody, he's a bit of a brat. That's Cecil Staskevich.
Who you calling a brat, you moldy old dustcloth?
I have been raving about Incident in a Ghostland since Macabrecast began. You gotta listen to those older episodes, Metal Melody. But you were so right. Incident in a Ghostland is a French-Canadian psychological horror film, and it's a tough watch. But back in 2018, it was one of the better films I had seen in quite a while. And you know what? Swears or no swears, Metal Melody, you certainly make this show interesting. Thank you so much for your input on Burnt Offerings, and I'm glad you enjoyed it, and glad to know that there's someone else out there that also really appreciates the film and finds it frightening and foreboding. Movie has always stuck with me, and as you know, and if you listen to that episode 156, you'd know I saw it as a young kid, and it has just stuck with me ever since. Always great hearing from you, Metal Melody, and we hope to hear from you again real soon.
You are listening to Dark Marks Macabrecast, episode 158, Natural Disaster, the Undiscriminating Killer.
"1979 was all about nuclear power, the answer to the global energy crisis. But alas, the terror and fear behind it all. And who better than to capitalize on that fear? Hollywood, of course. Directed by James Bridges and starring Jane Fonda, Jack Lemmon, and Mike Douglas, 1979's The China Syndrome. George Kennedy is nowhere in sight. He had been in so many disaster pictures at this point, it was almost considered a joke now to have him in the film. The film was probably more a social commentary on nuclear safety and greedy corporate turds than a disaster picture. It revolves around a cover-up of nuclear energy leaks and a television news broadcast that exposes it. This was truly a fear of most people in 1979. And then life imitated art when a Southern California power plant employee was threatened by his superiors when he went public about an accident at the plant. A stuck valve that could have potentially been disastrous. Safety conditions that were pushed aside to save millions. Some themes in this film are, unfortunately, still prevalent today.
Goditi questo episodio de Cast Macabro.
Thank you, Maria Monstalia, for telling our Italian friends to enjoy this episode of Macabrecast.
Shh, come on now. Everybody pipe down. It's time for the final thought. You know, when a guy who watches monster movies is all of a sudden going to talk like some kind of philosopher.
Statistically speaking, you are more likely to die in a fire or even be murdered than you are to die in an earthquake. Well, that sure didn't make me feel too cozy. The lifetime odds of dying by fire are 1 in 1,365. The lifetime odds of being murdered are 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 18,000, depending on your location and demographics. Dying in an earthquake is 1 in 130,000 to 1 in 180,000. So, my advice to you monster kids is blow out those candles at the end of the night and always be aware of your surroundings, even when it's just routinely taking out the garbage. Oh, and you Gen Z kids who don't do any chores anyway, you're already ahead of the game. Beware the moon. Keep clear of the moors. But most of all, remember, be good to yourself. This is Dark Mark, signing off. See you soon, I hope.
This is a Macabre Theater production. Subscribe us.